The forlorn clanging of gongs and cymbals rang out in the great chambers of the palace of King Dasaratha. The long, slow cadence of drums resounded in the empty corridors like a wounded giant mournfully stumbling through the underworld. 1,000 candles flickered in the dim passageways, casting fleeting shadows into the smoke and incense-filled air. Offerings of fruit and flowers were laid at the feet of all the ferocious stone idols, whose bulging eyes stared out of animals' faces with long tusks and flared nostrils. Chuck-a-chuck, chuck-chuck came the hypnotic voices of the temple dancers, moving in a trance, their arms rippling above their heads and their fingers delicately undulating in the clouds of incense. Silver bells jangling around their ankles and wrists. Prancing with naked feet and closed eyes through leaping flames, their faces filled with ecstasy as they walked obliviously upon fiery coals spread across the floor of the bejeweled sanctuary of King Dasaratha's palace, giving their bodies to the fire so that their prince might be spared. But death would not be appeased. In the heart of the palace, the imperial mourners clustered anxiously around the bed of the king's favorite son, Prince Rama, weeping and chanting prayers, groveling on the floor and tearing at their hair, so great was their misery. The drapes of the tall windows had been drawn closed, and in the dimness of the royal chamber there was nothing but lamentation and sorrow. Rama lay upon his bed, pale, silent, and deathly still. Only the feeble and irregular heaving of his chest gave an indication that he might still be alive. But life was anxious to fly away, leaving nothing but a dark shadow where once there had been the magnificent bright light of the young prince's eyes. Rama's brother, Lakshmana, sat at his side, whispering desperately into Rama's ear, urging him not to give up his fight against death. But Prince Rama didn't stir. The lamentation of the mourners grew louder as the evening approached, and the dark wind that carries death in its mouth swirled into the savage sky. The clouds rolled back in terror. The creatures of the jungle crawled deep into their havens, and every living thing fled from the deadly messenger in the wind, leaving the world deserted and still, except for the night birds with shining yellow eyes that screeched and beat their massive wings, circling endlessly above the palace of King Dasaratha. Far from the palace, in the humble village sprawled beneath the sacred mountain, peasant children heard the wailing of the mourners and the carnivorous cackle of the birds. Trembling with fear, they fled into the safety of their beds, shivering and moaning as the cold breath of death glided menacingly over their rooftops. Women turned down their lanterns, and old men cowered in dark corners, fearing that death might notice their decrepitude and sweep them under its heavy cloak of shining black mirrors. Rama lay helpless upon his bed, and there was nothing to be heard but wind and lamentations. When at last the fearsome night had passed, and the sun made its blazing path along the bird-filled horizon, the drapes were drawn from the windows and the prince's room filled with sunlight. But still he did not stir. Lakshmana anxiously pressed his face to his brother's lips, and then he beamed with delight when he felt the wisp of Rama's fragile breath against his cheek. "Still he lives," Lakshmana exclaimed with tears of gratitude. But Prince Rama did not open his eyes, nor did he respond when his brother gently called to him. In desperation, the great king summoned all the holy ones and all the healers of his great domain. They hurried to his side from faraway places, from the deep jungle and the airless summit of the volcano, from the cave of the ancestors to the jagged rocks that rose from the sea of life in which the kingdom of Dasaratha floated. And when they were assembled in the palace, the king commanded them to achieve